Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
So let's welcome today's speaker, Charles K.
Thank you. Charles, alcoholic. I want to thank April for asking me to come out and talk. Some important stuff, not important really, but it seems to be something speakers always say, sobriety date, their home group, and their sponsor. I've been sober since June 19th, 1994, and my home group's a Pacific group. My sponsor is Tim K. And the obsession to drink has been lifted. So, sure Ben is thrilled for me right now. I have had suicidal thoughts during that time after my obsession has been lifted, but it's true, it's been lifted. I've had a lot of crazy thoughts. My mind is like racing right now. I have had a crazy year. So this year, just to give you a snapshot of my life, it's been slow and steady for a long time. Everything been in order. I had a couple of bad injuries in the military and then at work, and I had to have spinal surgery this year. So February I had a double level spinal surgery, which didn't go good, and it took me a long time to recover. I'm still not back at work. I go back next month actually, and in the middle of graduate school, my oldest daughter got pregnant. I don't care how, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter. She's got a great guy, but still in my mind, they're too young. Like all the stuff that goes through your head, how's she going to raise this kid and do this stuff? My wife's looking at graduate schools. My youngest kid is getting ready my daughter's getting ready to go into a high school, so she's testing with all the Catholic high schools. We just have all this stuff coming up. I can retire in 4 months. I'm like, so I have to get another job. Like all this stuff's going on. I'm trying to finish school. I start my last semester next week, and it just feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose, man. It's like they just opened it up, and I'm trying to drink from it, and my life hasn't been like that in quite some time. And I'm grateful that I have this program, and I'm grateful I got my training in Alcoholics Anonymous where I did. I'm grateful that I understand that it doesn't really matter what I think. It just matters, what I do. And every day I show up, and when I get anxious about it, I just dive into my schoolwork, or I dive into something I have to do, and I just work on that until the thoughts go away. Most of my problems today die from lack of attention, thank God, but there was a time when I had a problem, I would think about it 24/7, that mental obsession, that madness that goes on. My alcoholism has not gone away. Me ingesting alcohol has gone away, but my alcoholism has not gone away. My oldest daughter, gave birth to my first grandchild last night, and so we didn't get much sleep. Yeah. So now it's reality, so the whole new fear is set in about this grandchild, and she wanted me to come to the hospital this morning, and I said, no, I can't. I got to go speak in AA, and she's actually in AA. My whole family, like my wife's in AA. I got a sister in AA, so my family's very well versed with AA, and they love it. My mom loves it. She's like almost 90, and she's a big card-carrying Catholic, and she loves it. It's changed my life. She saw me as a kid. And I don't have a lot of time to go into it, but, I'm the youngest of 6 kids, German-Irish Catholic family. I didn't come to you wearing a skinny suit and looking like this. I grew up in a housing project in the city of LA, and I ran around the streets of Venice growing up. I started tattooing myself at a young age. I'm pretty much covered in tattoos because I'm a gangster and I need you to know that. You know what I mean? It's easier that I don't have to tell you I'm a gangster. If I'm tattooed, you can just look at me and see that. And I was into getting out of the way I felt from a very young age, from tattooing to, sugar initially, like everything. And I grew up in that neighborhood, and it was a crazy neighborhood, and it taught me to run at things that scare me. There was like 6 white families out of a 600-unit housing project, and it's the kind of place where it sounds like the helicopter's landing on your roof every night and the lights in your window and the police are chasing people through the buildings. And back in the mid-'70s when flashlight therapy from the police was allowed, and their street justice, and I was the recipient of a lot of that as a kid. And I ran around, I wanted to fit in with those really tough guys in the neighborhood, and they were older, and I remember I didn't like alcohol because I hadn't gotten enough of it into me to feel the effects, but I was like maladjusted to every situation in my life, whether it be my family, whether it be the people I wanted to associate with. I just absolutely felt like I didn't fit anywhere until the day that we played a drinking game and I got enough alcohol in me to feel, to experience the effects that alcohol has on me when I ingest enough of it. And all of a sudden, those guys I thought were the hip, slick, and cool guys, they weren't that cool anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I came in, like before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm judging, like, how I feel based on your outsides, and it usually falls within the realm of I'm better than you or less than you, and it usually has something to do with how much alcohol is in my system at the time. And I'm not a tough guy, but I did a lot of dumb stuff in that neighborhood. Because I was white, I had to stand out. I had to, prove myself, I thought, even more. And so I used to, I'm the kind of guy that will run his mouth. And, we'd be at a party and somebody would say something. I start talking about your mother and your sister and, all kinds of stuff. And until 4 or 5 guys were stomping me on the ground. And my attitude is I can ball up here as long as you can kick me. And you better knock me out or I'm going to keep talking the entire time. It's just like nonstop. I'm that guy. And consequently, I was in and out of the hospital, all the hospitals in the greater West Los Angeles area, not just like visiting, but admitted to concussions, broken bones, gunshot. I've been shot twice. I've been stabbed. Because, the craziness about me getting shot is, I just cannot shut up. I got shot and then kept running my mouth after I got shot. And it had a few drinks in me and, because I'm more concerned about what you think about me than my own safety. I know that now after 25 years sober and having worked the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and having figured out what makes me tick, but I didn't know why I behaved the way I behaved before I got here, but I know that now. And I'm more concerned about what you think about me than my own safety. So I ran the streets with those guys and I wanted to hang out with those upstanding characters like, Puppet and Trigger and all those guys. And, I was drinking in the streets and running around and consequently I got into a lot of trouble. My mom sent us to Catholic school. I got kicked out of Catholic school and then, I ended up going to Venice High School. And if anybody, Venice High School, I got kicked out of Venice High School. I got kicked out of 5 high schools in 2 years and because I couldn't keep my hands to myself. And I'm not a tough guy, but if you look at me funny, I'm more worried that my friends will think that somebody's disrespecting me and I'm not taking action. So I'm the kind of guy that if you look at me or look in my direction and I think it's disrespectful, we're going to fight, And so consequently, they frown on that at the LA Unified School District, and they kicked me out. And my drinking takes off, and everybody I grew up with, I don't get Christmas cards from the guys I grew up with. There was 40 of us. There's probably 2 or 3 that are sober that I run into and I talk to regularly. The rest of them are dead, in prison, for life. Or I have no idea where they are. Through gang violence, drug and alcoholism. I don't get the Christmas card that says, hey, my year was great and my kids are going to school at Oxford and here's a picture of our new I don't get any of that stuff from those guys. You know what I mean? They're no Ivy League school guys that I grew up with, and they were just straight. They were a bunch of throwaway kids that ran around down in Venice. And we had an awesome time. And if you're new tonight, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to tell you if you're here, obviously, you know, there's a reason that you're here. I don't know what your individual reason is, but if you didn't have fun, I feel sorry for you. You know what I mean? Because I had a ton of fun. Alcohol saved my life up until the point it got me here. So I got kicked out of all those schools. Like I was telling you about that night down at the end of Washington Boulevard in Venice. I was down at the square, this was before Venice was all gentrified and nice, and everything was boarded up down there. Half the shops were boarded up. They couldn't even rent them down there. And the biker bars were down there at Sunset Saloon. And we were running around down there, and I'd had a few drinks, and 30 guys showed up to talk to my friend and I, and 2 girls we were with on the mouth of the pier there at the beginning. And we knew them. We had mixed it up with them before, and I knew I was in for, you know, probably a good spanking. And so I do what I do. I started running my mouth, talking madness, and the first guy came at me, and I hit him with a bottle, and then, you know, all of a sudden they lost interest in my friend, and they wanted to kill me. And I took off running down the beach and realized, hey, you don't want to get caught in the sand away from, like, you know, the public with 30 guys. And so I turned, and as I remember making the turn at the crab shell, which used to be on the end of Washington Boulevard there at the parking lot. And as I made the turn, everything was kind of slow motion, and I could hear all these people screaming, get him, and they were chasing me. But as I turned the corner, the one guy was standing still, and then he extended his arm, and as I looked at him, I realized he had a gun. He was trying to shoot me as I passed by in the face. He wasn't really happy with me, and I put my arm up, and I took the first round in the arm, and it broke my arm. And then they chased me down the street. And here's the madness and insanity of my alcoholism. They chased me down to almost Pacific. In front of there was a coffee shop there, the Cow's End. And they caught up to me, and they started beating me. They had like tire irons and stuff. And if you've ever been hit in the head with a tire iron, it makes a very distinct noise inside your head when it bounced off your skull. And they're beating me. I know I've been shot. I've had a few drinks. And the insanity of it is I'm talking about this guy's mom and the position I had her in the night before, and they are just whipping me, stomping me. They picked up one of those metal wire trash cans they have on the beach, and they're slamming me in the back of the head with it, and I'm bleeding from the head. But I will not shut up because I know some of my friends are around somewhere. And so they were mad, you know, and he was mad. He stood back and He shot me again as I laid there on the ground. You know, and I thought I had a moment of clarity at that point, and I thought, you overreacted a little bit, I mean, I really didn't know his mom. I don't know why he was so upset, and long story short, that was my mouth, and that's how I was. And my perception before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous is it was their fault, his fault, school's fault, police fault. If those guys hadn't come up running their mouth, this wouldn't have I had never taken responsibility for anything I had done, or at least my part. That wasn't even in my vocabulary before I got to AA. And so, I needed to get out of town. I joined the military to get out of town, and got out of the hospital. My jaw's wired shut. They broke my jaw, 70 stitches in my head, broken arm. I got pins in my arm, a bullet in my leg. My eyes are black and blue, and I come hobbling out of the hospital, and there's a recruiting station across the street. And there was this poster of this guy coming out of the water, and there's like drops of water on his face, and he's all camouflaged. He's got a rifle. It's like an 8-foot poster. And, I had another moment of clarity. I thought, man, I need a rifle. That's what I need. And I wandered in the recruiting station, and I just explained to you how I looked, right? You think the recruiter would be like, hey, dude, go back, get those pins out. He's like, come on in. They must teach them recruiters how to recognize angry young men, and I fit the bill. And I joined, and I make these major life decisions in my life based on a temporary feeling. I don't know if anybody can relate, right? So I joined the military. I'm a project kid. I've never even been on an airplane, right? So I took the test, and they said, you can do whatever you want. In the military, you want to fly helicopters? I said, no, I want to be in the airborne infantry. And the guy looked at me and looked at the test scores, looked back at me, and said, maybe you're not as smart as they say you are, and so, I made this, 4-year plus 4 years in the reserve commitment based on a problem I was going through that was a temporary problem. And I had a moment of clarity again when I'm on the airplane, right? The airplane started taxiing and started taking off. And I had never been on a plane, and I realized that I had an insane fear of flying. You know what I mean? And because I'm a control freak. And my next thought that came to mind was the next airplane you're on is going to be at Fort Benning in jump school, and you got to basically get out while it's still in the air. And sure enough, you know, my next ride, they opened the door and basically said, get out. And I was so worried about what my friends thought. I wanted 47 jumps, and I wanted to refuse every time. And I will tell you that I was, once again, I'm more concerned about what they think about me. You know, you don't look over your buddy, old Johnny Ranger, and say, hey, man, I'm feeling a little uptight. How about you? You know, everybody's all airborne, berets and crazy. And, you know, they just indoctrinate you. You don't talk about hey, I'm having a feeling, dude. How about you? You pour whiskey all over the top of that. Keep going until it goes away. And, you know, so I was in the invasion in Panama. I didn't want to go. They activated us. You know, everybody's like, what's wrong? And I couldn't tell them my feelings. And I said, I've been shot. You know, I don't know about you, but I've been shot. And wait till the first person gets shot. And they're like, don't worry about it. And sure enough, first guy got injured. And, you know, combat is the great equalizer for tough guys. You know, I came back and they pinned medals on me. And my dad wanted to march me around because he was with the 14th Rangers in Korea. He was a paratrooper. And I am judging my insides, even though I did my job over there like everybody else, based on how everybody looks on the outside. And I felt like a coward, even though I did my job. And so I don't know what you do with those types of feelings, but I withdraw and I pour alcohol all over them until to where I get so angry and violent. And, you know, the madness just never stops. So my dad was dying of cancer, and after that, so they gave me an early out, thank God, because my drinking was, you know, formation was getting in the way of my drinking and stuff like that. And I got out and I came home, and my brother, you know, he said, why don't we go to the police academy? I said, I don't want to go to the police academy. I hate the police and blah, blah, blah. And he had a friend who worked in local department as a lieutenant, and he showed me his check, and I said, well, maybe I could do that. You know, maybe I don't hate him so much. And so I went to the police academy in 1990, and then finished my rookie year. And, you know, I worked in Skid Row in South LA for like 7 years. I love that area. I didn't know why then, but it's because it reminds me of home. I understand why people will stab each other, you know, with their preferred weapon down there, which is a box cutter over the last drink out of a bottle. I recognize that type of behavior from the neighborhood I grew up in, and I just love like adrenaline, you know, like I love those man with a gun call, you know what I mean? Like I'm driving on the sidewalk to get there. I want to be standing in the street with a guy, like I think I'm in the OK Corral or something. And, you know, I tell you, like I've been on that job 29 years, and I drive a lot slower now. I take my time to get to those calls. I'm almost 50, and I, you know, I've been able to survive, and, you know, to this point. But so my drinking gets out of hand, and I start getting in trouble. In the beginning, I'm still drinking, and you know, I'm coming to work with black eyes. I'm waking up like blackout drinking, like crazy stuff, like losing my gun. People lose their car. I lost my gun for like 7 weeks once, and well, it's not even my gun; it's their gun, right? Let's be honest. And my brother works on the other shift, so as he comes off, I grab his gun and put it in my holster and go out. And I found it in the bottom of my dirty clothes hamper, and that tells you how much laundry I was doing at the time. And I'm drinking every day, out of control. Like, I'm doing my job well, but I'm coming to work, like, you know, feeling the effects of alcohol because I'm drinking the clock around. You know, people talk about coming out of blackouts and, you know, going, where am I? Like, I come out of blackouts and, like, I'll be holding handcuffs and looking at two people. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, all right, who am I supposed to arrest here? You know, I'm trying to get a feel for it. Or it's one thing if you just come out of a blackout and you're not, like, in law enforcement. You come out of a blackout, you can kind of try to, you know, get hints and stuff. But when you come out of it and you're at work, like I was, like, everyone's kind of like looking at you for the answer. You know, everybody. They want the answer. And that's a tough place when you're in a blackout. And I got called in internal affairs and because of my fighting in the bars and stuff like that. And, you know, they're reading me my rights. I got a lawyer there. And, you know, they're asking me those tough questions like, what happened? You know, like, I don't know. I'm like, give me a hint. Maybe we can piece it together, you know? Internal affairs, those guys are like the cops for the cops, and they don't take kindly to that kind of stuff. And they fired me, and they should have fired me. And through some procedural stuff they had messed up, they had to rehire me, and then they rehired me for a day and fired me again. And then I fought and got my job back. And so I had been around AA my entire life because my dad was an alcoholic, and he sobered up. And I used to say, like when I first was sober, I used to tell it when I was going to all those meetings down in Venice with my tank top on, when I was lifting weights all the time so you could see all my tattoos and holding the walls up in the back and mad dogging everybody. I used to tell everybody I've been in AA for 10 years and I couldn't get sober. And the truth is I wasn't in AA. I was attending meetings of AA at times, not usually all the way through, but I was going to meetings, and I used it as like a dating service, and I used it as a place to hook up with my friends, but I wasn't in AA. I was around AA. You know, sort of like being in a submarine or around a submarine, and when it goes down, you know which one it is, you know. And so, you know, I was one of those people that hung around AA, and I would tell you what you didn't have to do. And if you're new tonight or today, I want to tell you, if anybody tells you, hey, you don't have to do that, it's been my experience. I would run from those people. I would run from them. This is a program of action. It's not a program of thought. It's a program of what we do. And, you know, I was one of those people that would go out and get loaded. 2 or 3 of us would go out, you know, maybe 1 or 2 of us would come back, and it was like a revolving door. And I've heard that story about AA has a revolving door, or, you know, like the longer I'm sober, the more I don't believe that. Revolving door indicates to me that it's easy to go out and come back in. You know, I think sometimes, you know, there's a door and there's a long hallway, and some of us get lost in that hallway. And there's very few of us who get here before we get here and don't know somebody who has perished because of this disease that we suffer from. My problem is I didn't understand it. And there was 2 guys that approached me in a gym one day. I was doing my second workout of the day because I just been sober like 90 days, but that's my AA program at the time. And I'm staring at my favorite person in the mirror all the time. I like the gym because I'm always paranoid, and I can see you coming from every angle. And I had an AA symbol on. And it was Don L. and Ruben L., and they were in the Pacific group, and I had been around Venice meetings forever, and they said, hey, are you in AA? And I'm like, you know what? And they got close to me, and I don't like space invaders. I don't like people up on me. I get really nervous. Like, I think, okay, you know, like, I think, you know, maybe I did something to them in a blackout, and we're gonna fight or something, and, you know, and I kind of tried to brush them off, and they weren't having it. They were in their evangelical stage of Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, like, I think Don Landis had a tambourine. He was sitting there, you know, and they invited me to a meeting. I'm like, nah, it ain't for me, Pacific Group. I know all about the Pacific Group. I know about what you guys do, and I know you wash that guy's laundry and do all kinds of different stuff. I ain't want nothing to do with it. Although I'd never been, you know, I knew, you know, the contempt prior to investigation. And then I started having these crazy anxiety attacks in the meetings I was going to, and I know now because I was suffering from untreated alcoholism. I can occupy a seat in Alcoholics Anonymous, but if I suffer from this disease, me, and I'm not talking about anybody else, but I've had people who have related to this. When I suffer from this disease, if I'm not treating it with the 12 steps and being of service, you know, unity, service, and recovery, then all of a sudden the things that I've done throughout my life begin to weigh on my back. And then all of a sudden I start having these anxiety attacks. You know, and I start having them to where I start feeling as though I'm insane, to the point where the only solution for me in my mind, because I haven't I haven't had that experience with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and been freed from that mental obsession, the only answer for a guy like me is to pick up a drink or to trust in somebody who's been down this path and say, help me. Blind faith, you know. And I drank many times for years. And this last time I took a leap of faith with a guy named Don N. And my life changed. I got actively involved in the group. I wasn't a rocket to stardom. I walked into the Wednesday night Pacific group meeting. I was wearing a slingshot with all my tattoos showing, cut off khaki shorts, corduroy Crip slippers, mad dogging everybody, and they're all dressed like I'm dressed at the door. And I mean, it was so huge. It was like a convention. And I remember walking in, and there's like this whole line of people that shake your hand. And this one guy held on to my hand. He held on to my hand too long, and I started getting like, I get paranoid, like, we're about to dance, dude. Like, what are you doing? And started asking me personal questions, like, what's your name and where are you coming from? So I know how to keep it at arm's length. I'm going to say something, and if you don't respond correctly, I'm going to punch you in the face. That's it. Like, so I said, my name's Charles, and I'm coming from your mother's house. That's where I'm coming from. And everybody's like, oh my God, I said, I'm going back after the meeting too, punk, so step off. And everybody's like, you can't talk to him like that. And then a bunch of the old convicts that are in that group, like Johnny H. and Don Ann, everybody grabbed me. And, I'm that newcomer, I'm, loud. I'm like, that punk was holding my hand and, blah, 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 like across this huge meeting, like creating this scene. And they sit me down. And then I realized several years later, like for the first 20 months while I was there, one guy would be sitting next to me, and before he would get up, another guy would come sit on the other side, and then he would get up, and I realized they were babysitting me is what they were doing. And so I got actively involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was not, I didn't do this thing perfectly. I didn't get God and, return to God or whatever it was. I mean, I stayed sober for a long period of time on the activity in Alcoholics Anonymous. My commitments, the things that we do, helping new people, stuff like that. But I refused the God thing for a long time. And I don't have a long time to talk about it, but, my life started to change. And at 16 years sober, like 2 weeks before my 40th birthday, I couldn't get out of my head. I had gone back to work after that, so I've been on the job since, and I couldn't get out of my head after 9/11. And I went down and re-enlisted like 2 weeks before my 40th birthday. And everybody thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. I had 3 kids. I had 2 kids 18 months apart, and I had a 4-year-old, and my wife's in AA, and everybody's like, what are you doing? And 5 months later, I was flying out of Orange County on the way to Texas, and then Moban out of Texas to Iraq. So I flew missions in Iraq. I was a door gunner on a UH-60 helicopter. I flew 600 combat flight hours over there, and I was lucky to be able, in that environment, to serve with those guys. I don't believe in war, and if you hate war, I don't want to hear about it afterwards. I don't care what your ideas are on war or politicians, because I don't have much use for either of them. But I believe in the brotherhood that exists in a place like that, and I felt as though I owed because I had gotten out early. And the funny part is, what I was taught in AA, I took with me. And so at night we would come off missions, and I was like twice the age of most of these guys, and I start talking about things that frightened me that day, and guys were looking at me funny, and then slowly but surely I started hanging around my chew where I slept, and we started having this meeting about what was going on. I talked about it was okay to be afraid as long as you showed up and did your job, and every day we got up and we did our job, and I got hurt over there and medevaced, and I ended up in, like 2 weeks before I was supposed to go home, I got significantly hurt, medevaced to Germany, and then home, and I landed on a Wednesday night. I didn't take any pills or anything. They were trying to give me all this medication, and I wouldn't take it. Not because I'm a saint, but because I had been away from meetings, and I was scared, and I knew that I would self-medicate. I knew myself. And I landed. My sponsor was waiting for me at the airport with my wife, and that was a Wednesday night. Thursday morning, I was on the operating table for the first surgery, and 12 weeks later for another one. And there was no ticker tape parade at my house. I'll tell you, my wife was not happy. She was afraid, and I was hurt pretty bad. So I realized later on, I just felt like out of control, and I got back involved in AA, and I just didn't know what to do. My marriage seemed to be messed up, and my sponsor just said, look, just take commitments, get busy. And like I said, I ignored the things I thought were problems and got busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. And slowly but surely, those things just started to fall to the wayside. My wife and I did a lot of work extensively repairing our relationship. And within a couple of years, my life was good. And then I was getting ready to go back again because I was on the tail end of that enlistment. And I got a call the night before I was to be promoted, and we were getting ready to MOB to leave again. And my 17-year-old son, like a lot of you guys know, had been involved in a fight. And somebody produced a knife, and they stabbed him in the heart, and he died. And the obsession for my alcoholism, like to want to drink, has been removed. I didn't think about drinking that night. but I damn sure came close to suicide. You know, what do you do when you're in Alcoholics Anonymous and, like, you know, you don't want to drink, but you know, you want to kill yourself? And I had to listen to all the dark moments of that and go through that whole deal. And I watched my home group surround us. There were like 800 people at his funeral, and they ran it. You know, they ran everything. Yeah, Pacific Group is. There were a bunch of soldiers, you know, like parking people and table people. And the people at the church, my pastor was like, who are these people? You know what I mean? They're like waving people in and parking them. And they were just blown away. I had half the guys from Iraq that I had served with. Half of my department was there, my chief, assistant chief, and the rest were people from AA and stuff, and from our parish. And there's been a bunch of, you know, it's a horrible deal that I share because it significantly changed my life. And, you know, after we buried him, I came close to hanging myself in the garage, and I made that call once again to my sponsor, and he showed up like he had every single time, and they got me some grief counseling, and I've done all the work. And it's still, there's not a day that goes by that I don't, you know, the book talks about you won't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. And I've lived that life before. But right now, I do regret things in the past. You know, having lost a child, I wish I could change some stuff. And I know that I'm eventually going to get to that point. But I'm not there right now. But I know I got a shot. As long as I keep putting one foot in front of another, I keep showing up to Alcoholics Anonymous, I keep sponsoring guys, I keep doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing, I have a shot, like we all do. Somebody shared up here from the podium, I don't remember who it was, that there wasn't anything you can't get through in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's true. I believe that firmly. There is nothing that we cannot walk through in Alcoholics Anonymous that somebody else has not gone through before us, if we're willing to allow people to help us. When I couldn't walk, you know, emotionally, I couldn't walk forward after the loss of our son. You know, the people in my home group, they got underneath my arms and picked me up and carried me until I could. You know, this is an amazing program. This is an amazing program. You know, my wife and I have almost been together 20 years, and it's strained our relationship, and we have a better relationship today than we've ever had. I know I'm truly blessed. You know, I don't want you to leave here feeling sorry for me. There's been a lot of, I don't have enough time to talk about it. There's been a lot of moments where it has brought me much closer to a God of my understanding, which gives me comfort in those dark times at night. But if you're new, I want to welcome you, and the key message I want to tell you is that there's a lot of people in this meeting. This is one of the most active groups in the Los Angeles area. I get to move around to quite a few of them, and there's a lot of people who have worked the steps in this group. If you're new, I want to encourage you not to leave here today without reaching out to one of those people. You know, I want to encourage you to join us on this broad highway and come walk hand in hand with us, because it's the best life I've ever had. You know, thank you for letting me share.
Repeat the question.
Okay.
That's what's going on in the CD.
If John wasn't here, I'd be in trouble. Anybody have any questions? Alrighty then.
Thank you. How does your understanding of your higher power change both with your injury and your death of your son?
How has my understanding of my higher power changed based on my son's death and my injury? I will say that I didn't have a lot of time to go into detail. So when I went over to Iraq, and so I was in the cradle of civilization. I was flying missions out of Mosul, which is right over the gates of Nineveh. It's all the biblical ruins there. I was at Forward Operating Base Diamondback, and I used to fly out every day and look at these biblical ruins. You know what I mean? This is the cradle of civilization. I had grown up Catholic, and when I got home, I had this overwhelming feeling of being grateful that I had survived, flying like 110 missions over there, what I had seen over there. And I thought that, because I had had that feeling at different times in my life, but I thought it would go away, and I was afraid it would go away. It kind of stuck with me. I ended up getting active in our church because my daughter was going to Catholic school, and they wanted me to bring her to Catholic school. And I told my sponsor, I get my God in AA. And he said, well, yeah, but your 8-year-old's not an alcoholic, dummy, so take her to church. And so I thought I was being of service to her. And while doing that, a fellowship, you know, I grew up about me in that parish. And then one day she was having her first confession. And it was just, I have these moments, there's a lot of them, but this is one. And the priest invited the parents to go back and to go to confession. I hadn't been in like 29 years. And so she looked at me and she was scared and she said, will you go? And my wife looked at me and said, don't look at me. And I said, all right, I'll take her. So I went back and there was an old Monsignor from Ireland there. And, I walked in and blessed me, Father, I have sinned. It's been 29 years since my last confession. And he sat up and started giggling and rubbing his hands together. He said, oh boy, this is going to be a good one. And I thought, I love this guy, man. And I told him why I was there, and I told him I don't really need this. This is like, he said, well, what are you here for today? I said, I'm here for my daughter. I'm being of service. I tried to explain to him, and he stopped me, and he said, I don't want you to leave here and miss, if you miss the point of today, it's just flown right by you. Pay attention to when God's talking to you. And I looked at him like crazy. He said, if you don't see that God's talking to you directly through your daughter, you've missed the point of the entire day today. And I got goosebumps and was like for me, I thought I was being a service in AA, and I've had a bunch of moments like that. I'm actively involved in my parish, and I could go on for hours about different things, but that's just one of the things, and that's what changed me. Before, it was all just action, and my mind snapped shut at the idea of God because of the understanding I had as a kid. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for today. Well, how did you combine the program and your grief counseling after your son?
Okay, the question is, how did I combine the program and grief counseling after my son had died? So I'm not here to judge anybody. This is my experience. I don't take medication for any of that stuff. I believe in my life, there's a lot of things you could prescribe medication for me for. I'll tell you, I've been diagnosed with all kinds of stuff. And I don't believe there's any cure for the human condition. I'm not a doctor, though, and I'm not making a judgment on anybody else. But so when I went in there, I explained to the counselor that it wasn't only grief counseling. It was I had PTSD from and I went to the VA, so I had gone through a bunch of stuff that I had to deal with all at once. And I explained to them that I was sober in AA and that I wouldn't be taking any other medication. And she was really cool. She said, wow, I've never heard that one before. And she was happy about it. She said, I'm going to tell you when I'm going to, professionally, when I think I need to recommend medication, because that's what I have to do. And you can leave it at that. And we had a great relationship. She was an old Jewish lady who had grown up on a kibbutz in Israel and been shelled by Lebanon. So she had some same experiences. I loved her to death. She had been at the VA for 35 years. But incorporating like AA, we talked about my son's death and my experiences in combat, which, helped me deal with a lot of those things, helped me sleep better at night. Hope that answers your question.
Charles, thank you so much. What's the single most thing that you did? You were in so much pain. You tried to hang yourself. You went through all that. What's the single most thing that you can attribute in sobriety that you did every day to stay above the water, if possible?
Do you want me to repeat your question to you now? All right. I want to make sure. What's the single thing? I didn't stop. So it's one foot in front of another. But there's a lot of things that contributed to that. I will tell you that within 12 hours, I was so angry with my son because he had a part in what happened to him. And I was so angry with him because I had lost him and I knew I wasn't going to experience. He had never had a driver's license or a car or any of the things, like all those moments you think about in your head. Having to look at him in the mortuary, I was so angry. And then when I thought back on my childhood and realized I had done far worse than he had ever done, he was a good kid. He'd never been in trouble before. I realized I had done far worse, I forgave him. It just came over me. And it was weird. There's a whole another moment of clarity with God and stuff, but the guys who were involved in it, my anger towards them was immediately removed. And it startled me to the point where I'm the kind of guy to drag you to a warehouse somewhere and chop your fingers off if you look at me funny. You know what I mean? I'll hate you for 3 years. That's just my way. So I was really startled when that was taken away from me. I talked to my sponsor and saw my priest. I can't explain it, only to say that, that was removed from me. And I knew that if I was too busy hating, I wasn't going to be able to be where I needed to be for the rest of my family and grieve with them and try to get us through it. So I would just say putting one foot in front of another, no matter what the task was, not just, staying under the covers. Yeah. Thanks, John. Last question. Sorry.
Okay. You are a survivor. Why do you think that kept you around? Do you ever think about
Do I look old? Is that why you say your age? Why? So your question is, why do you think God has kept me around, like, after all this stuff? Why has God? I mean, I'm grateful He has kept me around. I'll tell you that. What's that? I can't hear you. Yeah, I think that's it. But I mean, I don't think there's any one big thing. I think that the way I lived my life before, as compared to how I live my life today, I'm in the positive column of life on a daily basis. And I think that because I am in every area of my life, whether it be at work, whether, you know what, no matter where it is, in my family, at work, in our parish, in AA, I have something to contribute, and I'm willing to contribute that. And I think that's why I'm still around. You know, the irony of AA is, like, only in AA some of this funny stuff happens. I just got assigned to work internal affairs, and I got fired by them 20-some years ago. You know, it comes around, like, completely. Like, in the twilight of my career, I'm working internal affairs on the guys I used to hate who are asking those questions. And I just think that I think we all have the opportunity every day to be positive if we look for it. And the key is to take that action. And I think that's what it's for, not one particular thing, though. Hope that answered the question. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.